G'day everybody and welcome back to another exciting episode of DNA Reviews, where we put the old Mandalorian through its paces once again. And it's a Sunday evening, and with me, of course, is Mr. Aaron. How you going, old son?
I'm going well. How are you this Sunday evening? It's a different night for us, isn't it?
It is indeed. So we're just going on a different day. So hopefully we still get an audience watching us, and we currently do, which is good. And so we got Collins joined us, as has Christy, and hopefully a few other people will join us as well. So what we're talking about tonight, of course, and reviewing is the latest episode of The Mandalorian, The Foundling, or as one person described it, because they did not like this episode at all, The Floundering. But let's not worry about like all those negative thoughts and views. And as always, we shall have spoilers in this particular episode. So if you haven't seen it yet, it was out like 4 or 5 days ago. Turn away, look away now, as they say. So, which is particularly cool. What do you reckon there, Mr. Aaron?
Yeah, I'm ready to talk about this episode. Lots of different stuff happened. Lots of stuff I didn't expect to see.
Very, very cool. And once again, I've got Mr. Blake Edwards joining us, not the creator of the Pink Panther, but he probably could have been in a former life. He's actually my next door neighbor. So with a bit of luck, he'll be able to hear me screaming and yelling from this side of the fence. So, as always, we encourage people to put their thoughts, views, and comments up because our idea is just to have a look at these episodes, give them a bit of a review, what works, what doesn't work, and maybe just explain some things that some people have been scratching their heads over. So the first thing that comes up now, last week, we were on Coruscant. We had this whole thing about 40 minutes worth of Dr. Pershing and Elia Kane. And this week we thought, we said this last week, they're either going to continue that story or just forget it completely. And they forgot it completely. So that was the end of that. We went straight back to the unknown planet still with our covert of Mandalorians. And now their group is getting bigger and bigger. And it's interesting to note that they're going through this big training session, which is all very groovy. Somebody actually suggested that maybe they picked this planet because of all the hazards and the difficult lifestyle, sort of to toughen them up. I'm not entirely sure. And of course, the funny thing is that half these guys are shooting their lasers into the water, not even at targets. That's an easy target to hit, the water. What do you reckon, dude?
Well, I looked at this and I was like, I don't know if this is the regimented training regime of Mandalorian super commandos. It more looked like Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, what they do in Sherwood Forest. I didn't think it was like the level of training I thought Mandalorians would be doing.
I thought it was interesting to get the two guys with the flamethrowers and they sort of meet in the middle. And imagine if one guy's button doesn't get pressed and he's just like, oh, I've just cooked the other dude. I was like, yeah, sorry about that. It's all good. Medic! I get it. They're going through the training thing. It's all good. But I agree with you. It's not really regimented. It's not like military training you'd get in the army, and they're not like, give me 20, that sort of thing. We're all doing the push-ups. It was a little bit superficial, dare I say, a little bit wanky. But we know what they're trying to do. And they're doing it in the simplest way possible for the audience to pick up on. But I'm sure a lot of people look at it and go, you know what, they're not going to learn anything doing it that way. But anyway, but they're a big group now. So, yeah.
Christy said Robin Hood men in tights, Mandalorian men in Beskar.
Exactly right. So last week, you might remember, the cash cow, right? Good old Grogu got the flick. We hardly saw him at all. And he, as we've said, he brings in the money for the general public who love these shows. Well, turns out he's back and he's as cute as ever. And I thought, yep, they've obviously realized we've got to chuck him in. He gets his own close up and he looks really, really pretty and really, really cute. And I thought it was cool because it gives the impression he's moving these rocks with the Force. And it turns out later on that they're like crabs. I actually thought this was quite good. It was a really nice way to bring him back. And he's having a bit of a play with the rocks there, with the crabs. I really liked it. So how'd you find this?
Yeah, I thought it was cool too. I'd just seen a trailer for a movie, the Super Mario, and there's a scene in that where you get the little mushroom people going, but we're too adorable to fight. And I was just thinking of Grogu when I saw that, and they are starting his training pretty young.
They are, and I'm going to get to that in a sec. Tracy said maybe it's more about training the foundlings and the younger ones. Not that I saw. Everybody was involved. Certainly there are the kids that are involved, but there were adults in there too. I mean, you wouldn't give a little kid, oh, I got a flamethrower. Oh, how good is this? Oh, I can't control it. Hang on, Fred, can you help me? Oh, sorry about that. Pardon me. Excuse me. Pardon me. Yeah. Oh, dear. But anybody who's had military experience will probably look at it and go, oh, yeah, anyway. But you are right. So Grogu, right? And I thought this is interesting. They're forcing him to fight, right? And even the way he looks at Din, it's almost like saying, hang on, cut him. I'm just a little dude here. It's like, oh, it's not my thing. And they're pushing it forward. They're actually forcing him to do it. So it's not like Grogu said, yeah, I'm ready to take on some guys and beat the hell out of them. This is a very questionable sequence about the motivations here. Din saying, well, if you want to be a Mandalorian, you're going to learn how to fight, whether you like it or not. And I reckon there could be some people who go, you know what, that's actually not the way to do it. So, yeah, did you pick up on that as well?
I did. I actually thought it was a nice juxtaposition with what Luke was doing with the training to be a Jedi, where Luke's training is more jumping around and defensive and going after frogs, where the Mandalorian training is, okay, you've got like darts, you're going to start shooting people. So even as a Jedi, one of the things in the Star Wars universe is everyone starts training pretty young. Everyone gets their childhood totally robbed, don't they, if you're going to be in any of these different groups?
It's a good point. When Luke was with Yoda, he wanted to be trained, right? When
Yes.
Grogu was with Luke, he really didn't give a rat's ass. All he wanted was his freaking flying frogs, right? And so here, they've just stuck him in the ground and they just surrounded him and said, oh, whether you like it or not, it's going to happen. And that's what do you call it? It's almost like the bullying tactic to a large degree, because Grogu can't speak and say, no, I don't want to do it. I'm a pacifist. And then, of course, as we discover later on, he's had some PTSD in terms of combat moments. And I thought, yeah, that's an interesting way of looking at it, and he's just been pushed into it. Christy also said how I liked how the rocks move by themselves. Yeah, it was a good moment. It was very, very cute. And, yeah, and you can see he's about to chow down on these crabs, and that's why someone had suggested when they're shooting at the water, the guys, they're shooting at the water. What the hell are they shooting at? Maybe they're shooting at the crabs. So I don't know. Yeah. So the funny thing is, this gets around a particular problem, right? The kid says, and kid's name is Ragnar, right? Says, why isn't he wearing a helmet? And it's like, I reckon the writers were in a box and they go, yeah, why isn't Grogu wearing a helmet? And then Din says, oh, he's too young to wear a helmet because he can't speak the creed. Now, of course, the lifespan of his species is that long. It could be hundreds of years before he can speak the creed. So I tell you what, these guys are going to be waiting a while. What do you reckon?
I think the actual thing was he can't wear the helmet because not as many people would buy a plush Grogu toy if he had a helmet on and didn't look as cute.
Well, I don't know. I mean, can you imagine a Grogu with a helmet on? It would look a little bit like this. It's Din Djarin's version of Mini-Me. How good's that?
Well, I think we're going to go there one day for sure, aren't we?
Well, I actually read a review from somebody, and they said that if they ever said, oh, we need to put a helmet on Grogu, and of course, rationally, it makes no sense. They've never been designed for non-human species, right? So one, it becomes a design nightmare. What do you do? Because of the ears. And this person said that if they jam a helmet on his head and his ears come down, and you see like the thing can only be this big, right? The helmet will be tiny. That is not going to work. That is going to make the show laughable, and the character is going to become a joke. They stick the helmet on his head, and he's got his little green arm sticking out. It's going to be a complete farce. So I think they found a way to get out of that, and by not putting the helmet on him, and so because he can't speak. And I guess it makes sense. He can't speak the creed. Got that. But even if he could, I don't think they'd want to do it. So what do you think?
Well, the other thing is, it is one of those things, if any species can become a Mandalorian by doing the training, speaking the creed, and living the way, how come everybody is humanoid?
Well, as a general rule, the Mandalorians only focus on humans, really. I mean, they're not like the Jedi who pick out or have different species. Mandalorian effectively is all human, and they just focus on human beings. They've never actually had aliens. You can't really have an alien Mandalorian. You could probably have an alien Foundling, but there's probably no desire to go down that route. It's not really what they're after, what they're about. Well, so Grogu really is the odd one out. And so I'm just going to get this in. And with that in mind, I mean, Paz and the Armorer, I'd probably look at a Grogu thinking, mate, this is completely the odd one of the group. He's a Force user. He clearly doesn't fit in with the rest of the team. So you do wonder, you're thinking, surely they must realize that Grogu being a part of their covert isn't going to actually work in the long term. Sorry, dude, I cut you off.
No, I was just thinking, if you were a different species, say you were from Camino with the big necks and the tiny heads, can you imagine if one of those, you've got this huge big neck with the Mandalorian helmet on top or stuff like that? I would actually like to see different species and how they adapt the helmets to do it. I can see what you're thinking, and I think the same thing. It almost takes away from the uniqueness of Boba Fett and that by the more they add into the mythology. Well, that's what I think as well.
You could argue from a certain point of view, and this is like putting a little bit of real world spin on it, that it does have a slight racial thing to it. It's almost like they pick out humans to be foundlings, however the process works. And if someone said, well, hang on, there's a dude over there, we could bring him in or her. And they go, no, it's the wrong species for our group. I mean, you wouldn't have like Ifantmon. Remember Ifantmon? There's a gigantic monster that was in Jabba's palace.
Yeah.
You couldn't put a helmet on that to save your life, right? And they may even, as in by their creed, say, no, you've got to fit a certain species, in this case human, to become part of us. As it turned out, Grogu came in from the back channels, as it were, through Din, and they've just had to accept it and said, okay, you're part of Clan Mudhorn, bang, here you go. But you can almost sit there, you can imagine they're just sitting there scratching their heads going, yeah, how's this going to work? Because clearly it's going to be hundreds of years before Grogu can even speak the creed. So, anyway,
you've heard it here first. The Mandalorians are body shamers, but
it could be. It's the only way I can sort of think about it, and if you want to apply real world rationale to it. So, but everything we've seen so far, they've all been human. So, there you go. Very good. Oh, that's a good one. What do you got? Speciesism. Yeah, it's a bit like that.
Yes.
Actually, that's the simplest way to do it. So, but we haven't seen examples where they've said, "Oh, we'll let the aliens die. We'll keep the humans." But you can almost imagine that'd be their thing. It's the pure race. They've got to follow the creed and interpret it any way you want.
I kind of like, and this isn't just in Star Wars, this is in a lot of things. I like things to be vague where people can, come up with their own ideas. It seems the more they actually reveal about the creed or the Force or anything else in different shows, the more it actually narrows down, the parameters you can use within it. And this is one of those shows that does that, because it starts like ticking off different boxes for what this is the way and being in this clan actually means.
It's an interesting point because, like with the Jedi, they're full of different species. The Imperial Empire was very human-centric, and from what we've seen, the Mandalorians are pretty much the same way. So make of that what you will. All right, so Ragnar, that's the name of the kid, right? Paz's kid. Paz has got a kid. Who knew? Yeah. So how about that? So you do wonder, I mean, there's a lot of questions as to how to, procreation procedures for Mandalorians with helmets and all that sort of stuff, but we'll leave those jokes to one side. And in case you didn't know, Ragnar in Mandalorianese means either pet food or bait, because this dude is always getting into trouble. Unbelievable. What do you reckon?
Yeah, it is one of those things, and I'm not joking. When they revealed that was his kid, that was new information, wasn't it? And I was thinking, does he have a wife? Do the people they marry have to be part of the creed? Can they marry and have a wife somewhere else, and then they go to work with the founder of the armor and all of this? It opens up this whole lot of background stuff I don't know if you need to really be thinking about.
You're on the right. You hit the nail on the head, because for those who remember the Book of Boba Fett and the 2 episodes of The Mandalorian that were in that, so you had the armor and Paz went on Glavis. That was the ring world, right?
Yeah.
And the armor specifically said there was only 2 of them. Okay. Now, so even though this is meant to be 2 years, this set 2 years later, even though Wikipedia doesn't say that, it's still 9 ABY after the Battle of Yavin. The kid is clearly older than 2. So Paz has already had the kid even before then. Now, the armor could have been very specific and saying there's only 2 of us, because at that point, Ragnar hasn't been brought over to the creed. Okay, we got that, right? But you do wonder, it's like, well, okay, who knew? Like, does I assume it's the wife. Is she part of the group or not? So I don't think they've sort of really thought about it. They've just said, hang on, just make it the kid, because then Paz has the incentive to rescue the kid, as in Ragnar. So, but yeah, if you sit and analyze it, there's holes everywhere. Yeah.
In the back of my head, as soon as Bo-Katan didn't get the dark saber and her sort of clan broke up, maybe some of them jumped across because they're like, okay, she isn't the leader. But they did make it very specific in the Book of Boba Fett. It was down to those last 2, and you thought the Mando would get back in and then there'd be 3. But in that time, she's got a whole, the whole squadron of them sort of built up we don't know about.
Yeah. So anyway, it's just one of those little like weird sort of moments of the show. All right, now I don't know if you picked up on this. I certainly did. Right, so they put the darts on Grogu and on Ragnar, and they're shooting at each other. Now, normally with paintball, right? You shoot in different colors, which is cool. I got no problem with that. But the thing is, from Grogu's perspective, chances are he's got green blood, right? So from his perspective, it's like he's bleeding for real. Even though as a human being, you bleed red. So I don't know. It was just an observation. Maybe it would have freaked him out, thinking, Jesus, I'm actually been shot and I'm bleeding. So I don't know. So they could have picked another color. They probably should have had blue or something.
I didn't even think of that. Do we know what color his blood is? I don't think we do, but
no, I don't think we do. But considering that he's got a green complexion, I'm taking a punt and saying it's green blood. I can't imagine it be any other color. I don't recall Yoda ever having injuries, even Yaddle for that reason. But anyway, this one I saw, and I go, I wonder if anybody else picked up on this. I had a look, and I had a bit of a laugh. Look at that. Good old Ragnar's just copped the Grogu Predator tri-laser treatment. How good's that?
That's pretty cool. I did notice, the one thing I did notice after they go to another scene, and the spots are gone later. I don't know if that's because he went in the water, but they go back to Grogu and they're gone as well in the next scene too.
Oh, love those continuity issues, eh? But I love the fact, he did it in exactly the same pattern. I'm assuming this is intentional and a bit of an in-joke, as the Predator would target somebody. I thought that was just a cute little gag, and I thought, very good.
I also think Grogu cheated because they said you could have one at a go, and he went bang, bang, bang. I mean, the kid could have done that too and won on the first round.
Yeah. It's anyway. But anyway, good old Ragnar, as we said earlier, always gets himself into trouble. It must be Torng's day. Remember, we got that from last week's episode. And if anybody's going to get swiped, it's going to be him. And he gets picked up by the Raptor, and off they go. And suddenly we're into an action scene. Now, the interesting thing is, Paz says later on that the Raptor has attacked before. So you do wonder, why didn't someone take the initiative to go and take the Raptor out early on in the place, right?
Yeah.
And as also been noted, they all take off in their jetpacks. And it's like, doesn't anybody have any ships? Is Bo-Katan the only one with a ship? So what do you make of this?
Well, it's one of those things that was exciting. And I thought, haven't they got a homing beacon for if the Raptor attacks so they can do something about it? And we've seen the Mandalorian shoot tethers to TIE fighters and fly around on the back of a TIE fighter. Are you telling me the Raptors that they're fighting here are harder to deal with than a TIE fighter?
Maybe. I don't know. Well, I mean, with organic, as we saw in the first episode, with organic creatures, they do tend to sort of freak out a little bit, and of course the creatures fight back. But I thought it was just interesting. They all take off the jetpacks, which makes sense. But I thought it was bizarre that they said, "Oh, this is attack as it happened before," and they haven't done anything to prevent it or like put systems in place. They go, "Let's go and take this thing out." I mean, they're an aggressive culture, right? They're learning how to fight on the beach. So you think, okay, well, we've got this thing that keeps stealing our kids. Let's go after her and take it out. Surprised they didn't do that. But it was good that they took off in the jetpacks. I had no problem with that, even though it was a bit of a cockeyed thing to do. And I did like the fact that they said that the fuel, they had limited amount of fuel, right? Rather than they could just keep flying forever. I thought that was really, really good, even though you would have thought that they knew that they couldn't get to the Raptor's nest because it was so far away. So they would have had this problem before. And then, of course, you go, mate, they've flown miles. How are they going to get back to the place? It's going to take them 100 hours to walk back. Hollywood.
Yeah. Oh, you can't put logic into the Star Wars universe. Maybe someone flew in with a whole lot of replacement backpacks or something.
Could be. It did look good. I mean, there's the visual effects of that. The whole sequence looked great. And Tracy's made a point of saying about with the shooting of Grogu, they could take good fire in any order. Exactly right. So, and it did work. He jumps over, jumps back, bang, 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 3, does the Predator thing on Ragnar, and of course Ragnar walks off in a bit of a huff, and then he gets swiped by the Raptor. So, kids having a hard day at the office. What can I say?
Do you know what would have been cool if you looked down at Grogu's wrist and it had on his gauntlet Raptor attractant or something?
So the guys are flown off, and you can see this is how the mindset of people work, right? So the Raptor's taken off with Ragnar. Everybody said, in the jetpacks, off we go, right? Bo's clearly sat and thought, well, that ain't going to work. I'm going to go the other way and get my ship, right? And it's showing once again her leadership qualities. Right, she's going to get the ship, which is the logical thing to do. And this is a beautiful sequence. It looks exactly like out of Force Awakens, if you remember, with the TIE fighters attacking.
Apocalypse now.
Yeah, exactly right. So this did look good. So she at least had the brains to go, you know what, I'm going to go out of the box thinking and grab a ship, which apparently nobody else seems to have. And she's gone off to go and find out where this thing is based. And as it turns out, it is a long way away. So, which is good. It was a good moment. And one thing about the action scenes in this episode, they're actually really well done. Even if some of them are a bit silly and there's some dumb stuff that goes on, they do look good. There's no denying that at all. So, very good. She has a little backpack. I don't know who you're referring to. Bo? Don't know. So, yes. Very good. Now, what's interesting, and this has been occurring for the past couple of episodes, so this was the lead-in, right? And we suddenly get the Mandalorian logo come up. But of course, and I said this when the series first started 3 years ago, the Mandalorian isn't necessarily about Din Djarin. It could be about any Mandalorian. And at the moment, Din is effectively becoming second fiddle in the show to Bo. Bo's becoming the main protagonist in this series. And that's not a criticism and that's not a problem. But you remember how they used to do the A with his silhouette in the A? Wouldn't it be funny if they changed it and put her silhouette in there? It still matches, it still fits, but it's now shifting. The focus has shifted from one individual Mandalorian to a number. And I quite like that. So if it turns out that Din is being pushed out of his own show, which is not his show to start with, then and it moves on to a different character, I reckon that's a good thing.
Well, by that logic, you could have it that the whole show's about Grogu. If he becomes a true Mandalorian in the last episode, that could be about his journey to become a Mandalorian as well.
True, but he'd have to speak the creed, and if he can't speak the creed and do the whole dunking in the waters thing and get the helmet and all sort of bizarre, it could be, absolutely. You know, if you want to sort of wangle it a little bit, it could be, and that would be really, really surprising to see. So, yeah. So Tracy said it had a little backpack. Bo did. So, oh yeah, they've got the backpack, but she at least had the brains to go and get the ship. So, yes, love the smell of raptors in the morning. There you go. Yes, Mandalorian is both singular and plural. So, so you can say one Mandalorian, two it's Mandalorians normally. So you're right. Originally, when the show was created, it was about Din, but now Din is not the focal point. But you can use that name, the Mandalorian, for the other characters as well, if you wanted to. So, which is a good thing. I've got no problem with it at all. So as I said, Bo takes command and knows where the lair is and know what to do next. I looked at these two extras in the background. They look pox. Seriously, they're just standing there. Clearly, the second unit director said, we just need people in the background. Just stand there. There's a lady on the right and a guy on the left, because you can tell from the helmet designs. And they just stand there. It looks stupid. And someone had said, maybe Mandalorian costumes don't look that good in broad daylight. They look great in with atmospheric lighting like we saw in the Mines of Mandalore. They look grouse there. And there is that. What do you reckon? And I think you said they're almost looking like Polish Boba Fett knockoff figures. Is that right?
Yeah, there were a couple. When I saw that scene of them walking around in the background, I'm like, they have someone on the team. They're so nerdy. They've used some of the colors from some of the bootlegs that you see around, and instantly they can look pox because they're knockoff Mandalorians.
Well, that's right. And if you know your history of the Mandalorians in on screen, they looked awesome in the Clone Wars, and you can imagine the covert Mandalorians looking like Death Watch. Right? These guys look serious. They look hardcore. They look scary. But what we've been presented in this entire series, especially with the covert, is a whole lot of, as we said last week, Wiggles colors. And there's they don't look threatening at all. And my theory is that they've deliberately done it because they want the four main protagonists, the Armorer, Paz, Din, and Bo, to look grouse. And the last thing you want is some background extras outfit to have someone say, they look awesome. I want that costume, right? Even the judge, is a bit iffy with his colors. And I think it's intentional. They've deliberately made them look stupid because they want our heroes. And they do look good. Paz looks awesome with the armor. The Armorer looks good with her metal helmet. Bo just looks good with a night owl thing going on. Of course, Din's got all the chrome, right? You don't want to upstage them, and I think it's been done intentionally. But the problem is it just looks silly. So,
what we probably don't know is the New Republic version of Queer Eye for the Mandalorian was on the planet a week ago and redesigned all the costumes for the other characters. But the thing that I did notice was when you had Bo-Katan's team from last series, they were all dressed the same because they were part of a military unit. And this is more of a ragtag team. And I do wonder if it's because they go through different things to become Mandalorians, so have different trials, so they just pick their own colors. I prefer them all looking kick-ass. But I do think a lot of the ones in the background have actually, for me, diluted what I think of the Mandalorians as super commandos, because some of them in like their pink and purple or their different highlights don't look like super commandos to me.
You almost like have a bit of a laugh when you'd be almost looking at it thinking, mate, what did you pick that for? So, I agree with you. It takes the thread out. But also by the same token, it makes them easy to identify. So if some group scenes, they can go, well, this dude here has a yellow helmet with purple pauldrons with blue boots or whatever. At least if you see that dude, that woman, guy, whatever, around the place, you can go, well, I know who that is. Maybe intentional, but I think they've deliberately dumbed them down. So it's entirely,
You were absolutely right, where Bo-Katan with her night owl designs and stuff really does look cool. And they've obviously put thought into that because it's a main character compared to like some of the kids playing in the background where they've got go and get a Zing Mando, helmet and just painted a different color kind of thing.
Well, because when the Mandalorians appeared in the Clone Wars, they looked awesome and they were
Yes.
threatening, and it was like you paid attention as opposed to the covert. It's just hard to sort of swallow it. That's just my interpretation. Christy said, which extra got their hands on the poster paints? Yeah, it does look a bit that way, doesn't it? So, yeah, a little bit silly. And Blake has said, really like the Mandalorian design when Maul took over in the Clone Wars. Exactly right. So that's what we were just saying. In the Clone Wars, the Mandalorians did look good. And in this, they just don't. And I agree with you. Maybe they're just assembling stuff left and right. And anyway, it doesn't really matter. It's just an observation. See where it all goes. So remember how we keep saying this is the way. It keeps getting repeated again and again and again. This time, forget this is the way. Now it's this is the plan. I like it. Once again, Bo just tells them what to do, and none of them say a word. They go, yep, we're all good to go, right? And we're cooking on gas. So off they go to go and fly and rescue the kid, right? I love this, right? Grogu's standing in the sand. Once again, we get the puppet walking in the sand, right? And it's like, get those little legs moving, kid. He's got to go in and, talk to the armorer. And she has said, if you wish to become Mandalorian, but no one has asked if Grogu wants to be a Mandalorian, right? Once again, he's being pushed into this from Din. So for all we know, now we know that Grogu wanted to go back to Din after the choice between Luke and Din. But does Grogu actually want to become a Mandalorian? For all we know, he just wants to be the pet dog that Din is. So that's a big assumption on the part of the armorer. What do you think?
I think Grogu has bonded with Din, and it's like he's his father, so he's going to do whatever he is doing. And because he is a Mandalorian, he's going to follow in his footsteps. I do think they've spent 2 series making this connection between the two, which is almost like a father-son bond. So that's where I think that this is going. He's following in his footsteps.
True, but as happens in real life, you can say, well, my parents do this for a job. I don't necessarily want to. I love them. I want to be with them, but I don't want to follow their career path. I mean, George Lucas is a perfect example. His father was into stationery printing, and George ended up said, "No, I don't want to do that. I want to go and make movies." Right. So using that as a perfect example, Grogu could easily say, "Look, I want to be with you, Din. You're my dude. We're hanging out, but I don't want to do what you do. I don't want to be a Mandalorian. It doesn't interest me." And it's just assumed that he does. So I don't know. Just an observation. So,
and he will be a Force-sensitive Mandalorian that can be trained to be a commando and use the Force as well. So he's going to be a pretty kick-ass one if he follows through with it all.
Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah, how long do they have to wait for all that to occur? Bo's armor is 3 generations old, and the armor mentioned modern techniques, so perhaps it's not about the age of the armor. Oh, yeah, I'm not referring to that. We're just referring to the color scheme, right? It's just the way the colors are. I mean, how it's physically made, whether you've got Beskar, don't have Beskar. It's about how the background extras, some of their color schemes are a bit skew-iff and a bit cockeyed and really just like, oh my God, just tone it down, make it look cool, because it doesn't look good, but each their own. All right, this is an important bit, right? So the armor's in there banging on this thing, right? And we're seeing this pole bashing down, which is kind of groovy. Now, will this be an action figure? As you as a toy dude, I want you to tell me this. Will this sell as an action figure? Grogu with PTSD face. Oh, dude, how many people were crying their eyes out when they saw this?
I know he was. It is interesting where they. You've seen in the making of things where I guess with Yoda, where they would. If you've watched the making of episode 2, they show him repeating a line over and over again to try and get the right emotion into it. And I was thinking, they read the script and it's like Grogu looks like, I guess, upset. How do they do that as animators? Are they making upset faces and copying it? I did think they did a good job of conveying what he was thinking.
Well, the ears are an important part. Like with most animals, the ears convey the emotion, so the ears go down. I mean, they could have done the whole thing with the lip. If you've ever seen the Batman movie from 1966, you'll know the joke. But it worked well, and it was this big close-up, and clearly the guys, as in Grogu's about to lose, the waterworks are about to start. It worked, but I agree with you. They maybe even designed a new puppet just to do it, because it's like, well, the actual puppet we use can't do these movements, so they've had to design a new one, and it did work. You can clearly see he's upset, and it was like, okay. And then, of course, that jumps us into this wonderful flashback, right, which I personally thought, stuff Ragnar, let him be eaten by the raptor. This was the interesting part of the entire episode. And we saw bits of this, I think, in the first season where we had flashbacks to Order 66 and what happens with Grogu. And now we see his rescue. And I thought this was kind of cool. And, of course, at this point, Grogu is only about 22 years old. So he really is a baby. And, of course, the Jedi in the temple make a specific point of saving him because they've got to get into the elevator and he's in his little pod and all the rest of it. How did you find this? Because I reckon this was a really good sequence.
Do you remember last week I said, I bet this week will be a Grogu episode because
Yep,
they
you
just
did.
had none of him in it. So I could have done more of this. I really enjoyed it. Whenever they flash back and show stuff that's happening with the beginning of the Empire taking over, I just want to see more and more of that. I think that was fantastic. And
Yeah.
what I could see them doing, because as you said last series, we saw a little bit of this and it stopped, and we've seen a little bit more. I think we are going to see more and more of what happened as we go through the series, and I'm happy with that. This was probably my favorite part of the episode.
Yeah, I got to admit, up to this point, I was like, mate, I don't care about Ragnoid, let him go, you know. But I was like, oh, this is interesting. Flashbacks, and we get back to Coruscant. I love Coruscant, and Coruscant's popping up everywhere, like last week it did. Pops up back here. But of course, that wasn't the best thing about this episode. It was this thing. So, Kelleran Beck, he isn't just any Jedi, he's the best Jedi. Ahmed Best is back as a dude. And I don't know if he knew this or not, but of course, Ahmed Best, who played Jar Jar Binks, for those who haven't put two and two together, he has actually been on this TV show called the Jedi Temple Challenge, but now he's appeared in live action, and this is how and it's absolutely fantastic. But I thought, but hang on, clearly, Kelleran Beck is wearing a disguise, because in actual fact he looks like this. So he's just been out for a brisky morning munchin, and then the elevator doors open and he goes, "Ooh, miss, I like a dessert."
So there's two things about this. I mean, I thought this whole sequence was fantastic, but there's two things I was like, I wish they'd done it differently. First, I had heard rumors that he was back in this series, and I was really hoping they showed what happened to Jar Jar when Order 66 happened. Did he escape? Did he go, what's happening? And a trooper shoots him in the head or something like that? Or he goes, what's happening, Annie? And Annie just chops him in half or something. But I mean, I guess they're not going to do that. The other thing that I would have loved, and I thought they were going to do it and they didn't, when the door opened, I thought it was going to be Mace Windu, and they were going to show he survived the fall, totally messed up, and then he would get a real death in this, saving Grogu. And I thought that would have been fantastic. So for a second, I was thinking they were going to do it, but of course, no, they didn't.
Yeah, chances are Samuel L. Jackson was too expensive, and they go, "Who's cheap and available?" Ahmed Best, you're happy to do it for $50? Yeah, mate, I'm coming along, because he gets to channel his inner hatred towards all those Jar Jar haters who hung shit on poor old Ahmed Best for 20 something years, and he gets to sort of release his inner anger towards them. So I thought it was good that they brought him back, and but yeah, he would have been a lot cheaper than Samuel L.
Yes,
but yes, very, very cool.
Yeah,
love it.
So thought it was a good.
Sorry, you're going to say something? Go.
Yeah, thought it was a good sequence, and you know what it does? Hasbro love this, because now in the Mandalorian series they can put in clone troopers from the Order 66 wave, and the blue ones, and the red ones, and the new Jedi and stuff like that, which is probably going to sell a lot better than the background extras on the planet where the Mandalorian is.
Yep, no, I agree with you. Blake has said, really good to see more Order 66. Oh, yeah, right. You can't get enough of it. It's absolutely fantastic. And the more they fill in, the better it is. And of course, if you get a chance, I mean, you don't in this episode, to see which Jedi are we looking at, and you can say we now know their fate, which is a very, very groovy. Christy, you're right. So the chase seemed contrived and nearly, like the mountaintop, which we saw last week. I called it Umate. I think it's pronounced Umata. I think I got that wrong. So at least we got to see, because we always wondered how Grogu got out of the Jedi Temple. Did someone help him? As it turned out, someone did. And who helped him? Of course, this is a Bombad Jedi. Sorry, all the Jar Jar longs just come back. You can't get rid of them. So, love it.
I'll tell you what, the Jedi Temple looks a lot better and moodier when it's lit dark, doesn't it?
Oh, doesn't that look as an iconic image we haven't seen for I think 20 something years, the Jedi Temple burning down. Absolutely fantastic. So yeah, this was really, really good stuff, and it worked really, really well. Remember in an earlier episode when they hung shit on the Gungans? Yeah, well, no one really is a big fan. You know what? I actually liked the Gungans. I thought the Gungans were a great idea in Phantom Menace. Jar Jar was the one who was a pain in the ass, and of course he was vastly different to the rest of the group, except for Boss Nass. He was a bit of a pain in the bum. Now, I don't know if you picked up on this. I had to rewatch this part, right? So Grogu ends up in what effectively would be the seat next to the bike in the BARC. It's a biker advanced reconnaissance commando speeder. And it goes, it's got a sidecar on it. What are the chances of that? But it actually had that when the troopers first landed, because there was a dude sitting in that. Because I thought if there was no sidecar, these guys would have been screwed. But anyway, it was a good chase sequence through Coruscant. I really liked it. It was really, really groovy. You knew how it was going to end. And of course, they end up on a platform with Naboo security forces. I thought,
Yeah.
oh, dude, we haven't seen those guys for like a long time.
So I thought that was another surprise for me, and getting the Naboo ship as well, and Grogu and the Naboo are involved now, which was a big surprise because we didn't see that coming. Maybe we are going to get more of Grogu's backstory, which again I think is fantastic. We might even get Boss Nass.
Oh yeah, that spammy. I was going to say, so someone had suggested that the whole Jedi Temple attack took a couple of hours, right? Because people were wondering, it's like, how did they organize this escape on the Naboo ship so quickly? But if the whole thing's been dragged out for a couple of hours, you'd think it'd take the stormtroopers and Anakin to go through. It'd take them a while to get through. And of course, in the interim, someone's put calls out, mate, we're under attack. We've got to bail out. And the Naboo obviously have decided to assist where they can, and we get to see the Nubian yacht. And of course, there was jokes going around that maybe Jar Jar, because remember Jar Jar was the one who gave the emergency powers or suggested the emergency powers to the Emperor. And if Grogu at some point spent time with Jar Jar, so it's possible, but I don't think anybody really cares. But at least we get an idea as to what's going on, and it's possible that Grogu ends up back on Naboo. So interesting.
Well, again, I was thinking, and they could have done it if they had got Jimmy Smith to do it. They could have shown the scene where Bail Organa is saying, "Hey, what's going on here?" And the troopers go, "Time for you to go home," kind of thing. And you see that scene, and it continues, and he gets on a communicator and goes, "Fuel up the Naboo fighter. Something bad is happening. We've got to get the Jedi out," or something like that. There's all these little things. I'm sure the writers think of it, and they can't do all these little fan things. But for me, I think it's cool to kind of
it's not a bad thing.
Like that.
Yeah, it's not a bad thing. It's just filling in gaps and go, well, okay, maybe this happened, maybe that happened. And if it does happen that way, it's good, because you are right. You sort of forget that Bail Organa is a big supporter of the Jedi. He's friends with Obi-Wan and all the rest of it. And you kind of think that it's just him and nobody else. Then you realize afterwards, of course, the Naboo would have a big connection to the Jedi as well. And there's probably others who'd be going, let's see the temple on fire, putting the call out, what's going on? We need to evacuate, come to us, off we go. Which is cool. And of course, when they land on the platform and the Naboo guy says, "Where are the others?" and Caloran says, "There are no others," and you go, "Well, clearly they were waiting for a few of them to turn up." So, it was, and that just goes to show how brutal Order 66 was. So many of them died. So
I do like the writers of all the new Star Wars iterations on Disney Plus must be big fans of Order 66, because how they ended Rebels, and they've had flashbacks and done stuff with it before. And I'd like how they're filling that in, because it's one of the areas I would really, as a fan, like to see what happened and how the Empire really went hard on everyone. And it is one of those things, we see the end of episode 3, and then it's like 20 years later.
Yeah. And it's important for people to remember that when the Jedi were destroyed, the population generally accepted it because they thought the Jedi had tried to take over the government. So, so it made their sort of dodgy image look even worse. Anyway, so we're back to Grogu. He gets in the ship. They go into hyperspace, and this is where he's freaking out. He's probably never been to hyperspace before, and he's completely losing his load over all the streaking lights. And I thought this is interesting. Of all the things to sort of, not all the fighting on with the Jedi and the stormtroopers and whatever else, it's the hyperspace bit. And I go, okay, fair enough. So, but yeah, very groovy. So he's a kid with mental issues, and he's being reminded of this from the armorer banging their thing, which brings us up this point, right? She makes this big ass shield, mate. It's almost as big as him. It's like, what was the point of that? He's already got the bloody Beskar chainmail on, and now she's put the shield on him. The poor bastard won't be able to bend over. What do you reckon of that?
He is the Mandalorian version of Mr. T. He's got the biggest medallion out of any of them, hasn't he? He's got the chains, he's got the medallion. I pity the fool that goes up against Grogu.
I'll tell you what, somebody had said, when she opens up his top and go, oh, hang on, where are we going with this? It's like, you want to see little green bits. What the hell, man? It's like, I reckon that, no, I just don't get that at all. Yeah.
You do know.
That was not, it was meant to be a serious bit, right? You're part of the clan now, you're Mudhorn, but it didn't come across way. I don't know. I thought there's a different way of doing it. So
you do know the only reason they've done something like that and highlighted the scene, it's going to save him down the track a couple of episodes later for sure.
Unless he's going to use it as a frisbee. I mean, he's already got the freaking. He doesn't need the chainmail anymore. He's got this big ass shield. So, and I like this one from Tracy. He'll grow into it later. Yeah, exactly right. That was kind of dumb, right? So, he made him to grow into it. Yeah, exactly right. So, but it takes him hundreds of years to grow. So he's going to be stuck with this thing on his chest. He'll be like, every time he looks down, he's just going to be banging.
He's gonna Grogu into it.
Love it. Absolutely fantastic. I don't know. It was dumb. But yeah, someone did say, he's like, oh, she's stripping the guy off. It's like, what's the deal with that? He's still youngling. He's 50 years old, but he's still a youngling. Oh, yeah, right. How low can you go? Very good. So anyway, in the interim, our heroes have all buggered off to find good old Ragnar, right? And they've said, okay, you can't use the jetpacks. The Raptor will hear it. You can't use the ship. Fine. They park the ship a mile away, whatever. And they walk. How far do they walk? That's 100 friggin' miles. This thing must have awesome hearing. I'll tell you what. So,
the plan was bullshit. Because are you telling me that if they got there and then they just jetpacked in, it would have been any difference from them walking up and getting discovered by the Raptor anyway?
Yeah. I don't know. It's a bit cockeyed. I was just interesting that normally you park and you go, it's just over there, right? It's all good. But now these guys are walking until it gets dark. It's like freaking hell. Daniel said about the two guys, the Mandos in the entrance of the cave, the Stormtrooper armor and Shore Trooper parts in their armor. I was too busy looking at Grogu walking, dude, because that was one of the funniest things. The puppeteers are going, oh my God, we've got to walk him again. I think the armor could have picked him up. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, so, Daniel picks up a lot more than me most of the time, though. So I'm glad when he does that. I didn't see the Shore Trooper armor, but they are on the shore.
They are indeed. And I'm going to say, as we said, the armor of the Mandalorians look pretty stupid anyway, for the most part. Yeah. All right, so our heroes get to the foot of the mountain, right? And they go, right, they've arrived. Kid's up there. He could be dying any minute now. And then they say, no, we're just camping for the evening. Rescue him tomorrow. What the hell? We're going to just chill for the night. No, it's all good. He'll be right. He'll be fine.
I know. It's like he's been taken presumably for food. Like, birds and their young don't keep the food around for days. They generally shred them up and drop them straight into the mouth as soon as they get back to the nest. So I don't know why they stayed overnight, unless they wanted to sing "Row, row, row your boat." Like
you mean like this? That was a perfect Star Trek 5 moment. They're all sitting around the campfire. Someone has to start it, right? Row, row, row your boat. Oh my God, this show's just ripping off everything, isn't it? So that's ripping off Star Trek.
And they're going mountain climbing the next day, just like Star Trek.
That's exactly right. Oh dear, Greg agrees. Yep, the kid's probably been eaten by now. Imagine they get up there and they've just seen that, because you do see a Mandalorian helmet up there, and they go, oh yeah, we should have come up here last night because he's already been chowed down. Unbelievable. Yeah, but that was a perfect moment for row, row, row your boat, right? And I love it. And of course, this is important, okay? Bo says, how do you eat? Because you got these freaking helmets on. What's the deal? All right. And of course, everybody's been asking that question. And that brings us to the, we'll do this relatively quickly, the bantha in the room. All right. Now, we have said in the past, and it's been sort of shown, we saw it in the first season of The Mandalorian, if you're a Mandalorian by yourself, right, and no one's around, you can take your helmet off. There was a scene in the village where Din is sitting there and his helmet's on his side, right? So we've worked on the view that if you're on your own, you can take it off. But the way the armorer has presented it over and over and over again, have you taken it off, has not put any conditions in it whatsoever and said, well, have you taken it off when you've been by yourself? Or have you taken it off in the presence of others? She's just said it's on, it ain't coming off for love or money, right? So how does that work? Now, what I think has happened is the writers have heard all the fan reaction saying, what's the deal with this thing? Why can't they take them off? How do they eat? How do they sleep? How do they show? What is the go? And I think they've written this in to answer that question, right? Because we always got conflicting information. The armor said, do not take it off, full stop. Now we discover you can, providing you buy yourself, right? Which means in the Razor Crest, Din could have taken it off a dozen times when Grogu was asleep or in a different room or whatever. So I'm glad they've tackled that at least, because Bo asked that question that we've been asking and they finally answered it. And so you can take it off, providing you buy yourself.
Which for me kind of opens up a whole lot of story, like plot holes, because if they came back from the living water and she says, have you taken the helmet off? And they go, nah. And like the armor asks, and Bo-Katan goes, no, I haven't taken it off either. What if she had to eat? What if it was a couple of days and they had to eat or something like that? Like they didn't give that out that you've said they've just introduced, where she goes, have you taken the helmet off when other people were around, should be the question.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. But the armor has been very black and white. On, off. Have you, even in like the Glavis sequence for Book of Boba Fett, You took your helmet off by choice, right? So that gives the impression you can't even take it off by choice. But of course, that happened in the presence of other people. But she didn't say that. You've taken your helmet off by choice in the presence of others. Didn't say that. Just said you took it off by choice. So it's splitting hairs, and it's good that they've clarified it. But it just means that they've addressed this particular question. Getting back to what's his name. Ragnar being stuck up in the treetops. The Foundling, good old. He's got to get up there. He's got an apple in his mouth. I love the sound of that. Now Tracy said when Mando, we have to clarify which Mando. It's Din. You can't say Mando anymore because there's a whole stack of them now. IG-11 that he can't take it off in front of a live person. We're not questioning that. We're just questioning what the armorer said. Right? You go back and watch every episode. She's never put conditions in there. She just said, "Have you taken your helmet off?" Full stop. Never asked any other questions, and that's why we had conflict. And if she's the authority, then it didn't make any sense. Very good. Din, thank you very much. So, yes, very cool. Anyway, it's been addressed. It's all good. Now, I laughed at this bit, all right? Okay, you got your food. You've got to disappear so you can take your helmet off. Cool. So what on earth would they be served? Well, of course, they're all walking away because they're going to be eating baked beans.
And you did mention to me on the weekend that this could have turned into a Blazing Saddles scene really fast.
So they say, no. You go and bugger off, eat your baked beans somewhere else. Don't come back until you're finished. And for some reason, Paz has really softened up his aggressive attitude. You know, he says to Bo, "You're the leader of the party. You get to eat by the fire. We're all going to bugger off." And of course, depending on how big the group is, they may have to go miles before they can find a space by themselves. So, but I did find that was interesting. But yeah, they're eating baked beans. You had to laugh at that.
We have, I'm sure, in the past seen the Mando eating as well, and he kind of puts his head down and lifts the helmet a bit and sort of eats under the helmet too. So, it was one of those things you're like, okay, they're adding more and more mythology to this, and I don't know if I like it. I'd rather it just be never explained.
Well, yeah, because like in the Mines of Mandalore, when it was just Bo and Din, right? Bo could have easily just wandered off, well, she didn't really care, so Din was the one. So she gives him the pog soup. He gets up, even though he's not feeling the best, runs around the corner, takes his helmet off and eats it. So anyway, it doesn't matter. And you are right. Yes, we all know what beans means. So yes, very, very good. It's too good. It's like, they've been served baked beans. No wonder they're going to go and walk off somewhere. It's just, you make a joke out of something serious. I love the sound of that. All right, they're climbing that mountain, right? They got their little lasso things, and it's all good. I did find it interesting because they're not all mountain climbers, that no one fell. I mean, in a movie, somebody would fall, right? And they might be attached to the cable, and they still survive. But they all get up there without a problem. I thought, fair enough. Some people have thought this looks too fake. There's no sense of threat. It is a TV series. Half an hour show, too. Damn quick as well. So, air freshener.
Well, the other thing is Beskar is strong as titanium, but must be as light as foam, because if you're climbing up with what looks like the size of a midi gun, you're going to be pretty tired when you get to the top, aren't you?
Yeah, I did like the fact you hear all the grunting and groaners are all climbing up. I mean, there must have been an easy way of doing it, but, whatever. It was an action moment. And, of course, the series is aimed at a younger audience. I get that. It's for children. They can just see it and they go, oh, my God, this is, like, really scary. They're going up this cliff. I get it, right? It's all cool. Doesn't matter. They get to the top, right? Okay, and, of course, the raptor's not there. They see the heat signature. All the young ones come out. Then the mother comes back. And it turns out she's been carrying around Ragnar in a gullet all night. It's like, what's the deal with that? And for those who didn't realize, he's called Ragnar, Rag to his friends, because he got chucked around like a doll.
Now, when we saw Bo-Katan go after into the sun, that must have been the sunrise. So it's the whole day and then the whole night. So it's been quite a while.
I don't know. You are right. I mean, luckily for Ragnar, he doesn't taste too good. There's a quote from The Empire Strikes Back. But yeah, so the Raptors picked him up, shoved him in I assume it's a female, in the gate, flown around all night, come back in the afternoon and said, all right, now I'll cough him up just in time to get rescued. Jeepers creepers.
Maybe he was swallowed and he was regurgitated and his suit saved him from being semi-digested. Maybe he was walking around in the stomach going, this ground store feels strange or something.
I don't know. And maybe, look, as we've said, Ragnar seems to be picked on by the monsters. For all we know, he's been captured by a raptor a few times. We've said in the earlier part of the episode, it's like, oh, not again. And he's like, oh, not inside a gullet again. I was here last week as well. DJ's joined us. Yeah, how many times has this happened? Yeah, and like, obviously a lot. And that's the reason why we said earlier, why didn't they go and take the raptor out and be done with the problem? But look, the reality is it was a good sequence, right? The chase sequence was good. It looked good. The guys are chasing it with their jetpacks. They're shooting a lot of harpoons into it and stabbing it and this, that. It did look good, right? No denying that at all. And the fact that Paz, it was, I think, Ragnar's in the mouth, and one of them's in the mouth, the other one's in the claws. It was a good sequence. It was a good action sequence, a little bit dumb, but it certainly was entertaining. There's no denying that. And of course, we ended up, now we've copied everything so far. So we've had in this series and this season alone, from Batman, Flash Gordon, The Time Machine, The Thing, and now Jurassic World. Because as we know, there's always a bigger monster, isn't there, dude?
Yeah, and it is almost an exact shot of Jurassic World where the thing comes out of the water and gets the bird. But this had a lot of homages in this episode. Again, they have been picking, classic imagery from all over the place this series.
Absolutely, I love it. Now, DJ obviously joined us late because we actually did discuss this earlier about how the Mandalorians do it, and you do wonder if the aim is to say keep your helmet on when you're by yourself, and there are a couple, a male or a female, getting together, and what happens then? And I don't think they'll ever discuss this. They won't bring it up because it's just too complicated. But you would think that as a couple, they can have their helmets off. You would think, right? So let's go with that theory until we're told otherwise. And you are right, Blake. There is always a bigger fish. It's one of the greatest quotes in the entire Star Wars universe. Absolutely love it. Maybe taken by a raptor and spending a day in the gullet is the way. Yes, indeedy, deedy. Absolutely love it. Dear. What? Hang on. If they set up the covert right next to a place where giant monsters keep popping up and trying to eat the kids, maybe they should move. Yeah, well, there is that as well. And as we said at the start of the show, maybe they've deliberately picked this place because it is harsh, it is dangerous, because it's a good way of training people. It's if you ever follow the Dune series, they work on the same principle with the saddle car. Yeah. All right, now this is interesting. Now we were discussing the episode yesterday, and we came across this. Both of us didn't realize we'd seen it until we discussed it. I did some checking, and for those who didn't notice it, when they're flying back, there's a ship parked in the water on the left-hand side, right? And for those who haven't put two and two together, it looks like it's the Icarus, otherwise known as the Liberty One, from Planet of the Apes. So now you had a theory as to why you think they put this in.
Well, when I was watching it the first time they were on the planet and this time, I was going, gee, this is where they filmed Planet of the Apes, when they were doing the above shots and they're flying around, and when they're looking down. I'm like, this is the exact set of like water lakes wherever they filmed Planet of the Apes. And it turns out it was where they filmed Planet of the Apes.
Yeah, because I didn't realize it. I had to go and do some checking with Planet of the Apes and go, oh my God, that's where the Icarus landed, sort of in this particular vicinity. So what's apparently happened, I think a lot of people miss this, I mean, they had no rights to put it in, and I think it was a Fox issue, and they've now had to remove it. But I think when it was first aired, the episode first aired, it was there, it was visible, and there's some moving shots, so it's pretty quick. And now it's been taken out. So if you go back and have a look, you won't find it there. So I actually thought, oh, maybe the visual effects guys put it in as a bit of a joke because it was from the same location. So it's also, a lot of people just didn't see it. If you go looking for it on the internet, I don't think anybody else has noticed it. But we picked up on it. I saw it. You saw it. And I was able to get a screen grab of it. And but yeah, if you go looking for it now, it's not there. So there you go. So now the question is, is the Icarus now part of Star Wars canon? That's a question for another day. What do you reckon?
Does that mean Planet of the Apes is like
that's the planet they're on Earth? Oh, yes. I didn't think of that in the future. Oh, well done, dude. I hadn't thought of that. That is absolutely fantastic. So, that is a good. I didn't think of that. Oh, that is very, very cool. So the planet that's been unnamed is actually Earth. That's why they haven't named it in the future. Yeah. Love it.
And the apes evolved into Mandalorians.
Oh, dude, that's absolutely awesome. Very, very, very cool. Love it. All right, so we don't know. Anyway, make of that what you will. But tell your friends.
The other thing with this episode, I found it ended really short. A lot happened, and it was over really quick. Did you notice that with this? Yes. So
yeah, it's funny. Last week's was an hour, and most of that was all set on Coruscant with characters nobody really cared about. This one was plowed through in 30 minutes. With that in mind, they finally land on the ship, and a lot of people were wondering about this, and I was too. It's like, okay, they've at least picked up the baby raptors. How do they fit these things? There's three of them on the ship. There's no way in the world they would fit. You look at Bo's ship, it ain't designed to hold all these dudes and these monsters at the same time. What is the deal with that? How do they get those to fit?
I don't know. Maybe it's dimensionally transcendental and bigger on the inside. But the thing that gets me is kind of what we were talking about earlier. They said they're foundlings. And we were talking about how there are non-human Mandalorians. Are these going to get helmets? And what's the deal with that?
Yeah, I thought they were saying. I don't know. I think who says it. Bo says it. I think she says it more of a joke than anything else because clearly they're
Okay.
going to look after them. I like the fact the guy had to carry a stake at the front,
Yeah.
and it was following the stake. So they're obviously meat eaters, and they're going to grow them up and ride them around and do all this sort of stuff, which is cool. But they're on the future Earth. It's like, who gives a shit? It doesn't really matter. But at least, because you were wondering, I go, so what did they do? The baby ones is living there to starve, but no, they brought them back, and I thought it was all good, fitting them in the ship that clearly they won't fit into. But very, very good.
So they'll
yes.
obviously grow up, and down the track, you'll have 3 of the main characters riding those, I bet.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And you can take a guess right now. The Armourer, Paz, Din, and probably Bo-Katan should be on a mythosaur. The world is good. So at least they got that one sorted out. So, yeah, very good. They are to replace the fuel issue with the backpacks. That's right. So they'll be able to fly a lot further. So, but the thing is, if it takes 50 years for these things to grow, they'll be looking after them for a very long period of time. Doesn't matter. This is a cool bit. Okay, so Bo-Katan lost a part of a pauldron, right? Someone said, and I love this one, right, that the current Bo-Katan action figures are now out of date because the pauldron's different. So it's time to invent a variant.
Well, I think we were joking about that in the shop on the weekend, and one of our other friends, Rod, came in with 2 Mandalorians, was talking about how you can pop the part off of the Mandalorian and put it on the Bo-Katan figure to make it screen accurate.
Yep, exactly right. Because I read someone complain they bought the latest version of Bo-Katan and it's out of date already. So, but yes, gotta love those variants. Now, Bo says, just doesn't mention to Din, mentions it to the Armourer that she has seen the mythosaur, right? And of course, you know, the Armourer thinks it's in a dream or whatever. And she says, no, I've seen one for real. And I thought the Armourer, like last week, would go, holy guacamole, that is awesome. How fantastic. Nah, like it's nothing. So that makes me think that the Armourer knew the mythosaur was down there, just like she knew that Mandalore isn't poisoned and the living waters are all good and cooking, I guess. It's like nothing phases this chick. She is completely cool all the time. I don't get it.
No, I guess just taking everything in stride makes her seem more knowledgeable than she is. If she reacted, oh my goodness, maybe she's just processing the information in the back of her head.
Well, in the past 2 episodes, she's received a lot of information of things that she thought were a certain way, and then they're not. But yeah, hearing about the mythosaur, I thought, oh, she's got to be freaking out about that. But no. But anyway, it's not a bad thing, but I was a bit surprised. So, yeah.
Yeah.
So
it was, yeah. I still don't know where this series is going.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat now. Christy, that's into my slides. We're almost right on time too. So if you can give me your crimson yawns for this episode, remember the more yawns, the worse it was. The less yawns, the better it was.
And I've got another.
And before, sorry, dude, I'm going to cut you off. Before we get into the our thoughts and views on the episode itself, for those who haven't done so already, be sure to check out the old Sci-Fi Zone socials. We've got our YouTube and Facebook and all these sort of things. Lots of stuff to look at besides the 2 of us and our talking heads. And if you like, for all your Mandalorian goodies, and funnily enough, we had 2 Din Djarin's turn up yesterday because I was at the store working yesterday with Aaron. They have turned up, Mr. Aaron. How good is that?
Yeah,
this is
so
the way.
All your Mandalorian needs, we have a Black Series loose figure and just a standard size figure in the cabinets. Like, there you go. People are being so turned off by this series, they're bringing it into sell already.
Yeah, well, the good thing about it is someone says, whereabouts is the store? And you go, look on the map and you go, see, this is the way.
I was going to say with the ratings, Christy can send in our crimson yawns and Blake can just bang on the wall really hard out of 10.
I got a long post from here from DJ. I don't know if you get a chance. It's like reading War and Peace. All right, so Christy's yawns. This is a massive contrast from last week, right? She's gone for the full 3 yawns. That's equivalent of 7 out of 10 out of last week when she absolutely despised the episode. So Christy, you're on a winner this time. How good is that? More background is good. What a ripper. What do you reckon, dude?
Yeah, I'm probably going for about a 7 out of 10 as well. I agree a lot with DJ's comment as well. I could have done with a series maybe without Grogu and with him traveling around with R5-D4. Grogu comes back later or something, but that's never going to happen with the cash cow.
Well, that's right. And we saw it from this week. They said, no, chuck him back in. He's got to look pretty and wonderful. It was an interesting sort of thing. We're 4 episodes in. We've got 4 episodes to go. And as some people have pointed out, it's not really going anywhere. We don't all know what. There's no big bad guy yet. I mean, the
Imperial
David
Baron.
Jones from the first episode, we haven't seen again. You know, what happened last week has sort of just been forgotten. It just seems to be aimlessly going around. That's why someone has said that the episode was called The Floundering, because We're not on any particular path, and I do think they're kind of making it up as they go along.
It feels to me, and this is okay because it does work sometimes. They've come up with really amazing action sequences, like the recovery of the Foundling and things like that. And then they've got the sequences, and they're writing the story around the sequences rather than coming up with a story and then doing it that way around. And Marvel have done that with Marvel movies where they've said, we want this and this to happen, and the special effects take so long, we're going to start it now. The writers just have to include it. And I do get the feeling this series isn't as focused as the first two series with a story.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. There's no real flow to it, and which is disappointing because it's got a big audience. A lot of people really dial into it. That's why last week was such a jar to go, well, where are we going with that? And I don't know. Until the flashback part, I was thinking, okay, the kid's been kidnapped, whatever. And I go, okay, now we've got some interesting stuff. The kid's going to get rescued at the end. Paz's kid, who knew? And I don't know. It sort of worked, and it kind of didn't work. I think personally, a lot of people would agree if it wasn't for the flashback sequence, the thing would get the scoring would be a lot worse. Yeah.
I totally agree with DJ. Again, we know stuff's going to happen, and getting to it has been a lot of fun. At least it's very watchable and very addictive.
Oh, it's entertaining, and it's definitely aimed at a specific audience, as we've said before. Gideon coming back, I don't know. IG-11, definitely, I can't say they want to have him because he's still going to get the part, right, which is now a long forgotten bit now. And he doesn't need. He's already been in the living waters. He doesn't need to make IG-11.
What if they need a droid that can go spelunking? Come on.
row your boat. So there you go. Absolutely fantastic. How good is that? Any final words? That's the end of our episode, actually. So we've done a good job with it. Got any final words before we sign off for the evening for this particular episode? I'm going to say, hang on, Foundling. I was thinking of floundering there. Foundling, Mr. Aaron.
Only that I have no idea what next episode's going to be about. This series has really surprised. Will this series lead into the Ahsoka series? Maybe, I don't know. Will we get finally Admiral Thrawn? I don't know. But interesting. I'm happy to go along and watch as we get there.
Very good. And who knows, Jar Jar may make an appearance in a flashback. You never go, ooh, yes, I want to be in a flashback. So there you go. The ultimate gag for everybody. All right, we're going to buzz off. It's lovely enjoying you Sunday night. We will be back next Sunday as well. So just because of the circumstances that we've got. So we're back next Sunday. Make sure you join us again. Hope you enjoyed our little review and discussion. Otherwise, we'll leave you to it. So in the interim, party hard, rock on.
Enjoy what's left of the weekend, guys. Have a good night.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.